In Diablo 2, magic finding is something almost every player will end up doing at one point or another, whether it's to get gear for PvP, refine their favorite character's build, or even in some cases complete a Grail run. For me, I'm more of the second type. I need gear to make fun and weird builds, so obviously with that, knowing how to find the stuff I need for that is a pretty high priority. So today we'll talk about the best places to find the useful and interesting items. If you're looking for Holy Grail tips though, that will be a different video. This is more about how to get the gear used in build guides that you see here and across the internet. Number 5. Super Uniques. The most popular one of these is obviously Pindleskin, since it's a quick run to his, well, red portal just to run in there and pop him. But there are a few that are relatively easy to run on single player since you have fixed maps that are not Pindleskin. Things such as Thresh Socket, Shank, Hephasto, and Eldritch are all fairly simple runs to do on repeat, as well if you wanted just have a bit of a change of scenery. They're not super lucrative, but they can get you some fairly decent gear on Hell difficulty. Bonesaw Breaker and Snapship Chatter are a little bit different, but also not too bad. They come with sparkling chests, which, while unaffected by magic find, are a good source of crafting bases, can sometimes pop all rares, or even if you're really lucky, all uniques for some fun finds. And if you're just hitting the bosses, Players 1 is your ideal, which is especially good if you're a Berserk Barbarian, which you can just pop them for a second drop as well on that Players 1. But if you're going for the chests, Players 5 is going to be a little bit better of a target to get more super pops, where you get a ton of drops. So just adjust accordingly based on what you want to do in that certain situation. Number 4. Hell Travancore. The general consensus is Players 3 is the optimal for Hell Travancore to get drop rates at a reasonable level, though you can improve them a little at Players 5. It's pretty effective to do Players 3 because at Players 5 you're going to generally be hindering your kill speed, but if you can do it without slowdown, then go ahead and do it. The reason Hell Travancore makes this list is because it's one of the best sources of what we call junk drops, which means useful runes, charms, rainbow facets. You can get a handful of good pieces of equipment there, but they're very likely to drop these more junky items that are used to make better items. I also use them a lot to get like decent bases for crafted items, since they do have a tendency to like drop magic for me, so I can get some elite type magic items from them for crafting purposes. And also, this is because the enemies here are base level 82, so if you're killing odds and ends, you can get magic from them. And of course, the council is a bit higher, meaning you can get some good like base levels for these kind of modifiers that you're looking for on crafted items. While they're not really good for standalone items, the stuff you'll get from the Travancore will serve as good components for making what you do have better, or even possibly making new items that are better than what you have. Number 3. We're going to be on here regardless. It's the basic level 85 areas. They do have to be brought up for normal magic find, even though they're generally reserved for kind of Grail runs. I call these basic because you'll probably just run through these popping the bosses, since clearing them about 100% doesn't really net too much. These are farmed because they can drop nearly every item in the game. That's why they're useful for Holy Grails. Only things that they can't drop are specific charm modifiers. For boss popping, you'll want generally Players 1, since bosses will drop the same regardless. For me, my main 3 basic level 85 areas are the Pit, Ancient Tunnels, and Worldstone Keep. These are only ranked this high because their use in Grail runs. As a new player, you'll mostly aim for the Pit and Ancient Tunnels because they're easier to run, though do note the rate at which you'll find something that is good enough to be motivating in these is generally going to be super low compared to other areas or bosses. At least that's my experience with them. You may have better luck. That said, clearing these areas as long as you're not overloaded on magic find is also an oddly good way to find base items for putting rune words in as well, since normal mobs can drop pretty much all the white-socketed items in the game that you could want for rune words, so they can also drop the socketed versions. Number 2. Act bosses. You may think this is all Hell difficulty ones, but no. You should aim for a mix of Nightmare and Hell bosses. Nightmare Andariel and Nightmare Mephisto are quick, amazing runs for basically your core uniques and set items, and even sometimes better than their Hell counterparts for specific items, like certain exceptional uniques, as well as in the case of Nightmare Andariel, Stones of Jordan drop from her more frequently than Hell Andariel. And that's just because the variety of unique rings possible on Hell Andariel is actually larger. And also, she's also pretty good for getting your set amulets out of the way. So if you're looking for Tal's amulet or Telling of Beads, that's a pretty good source of those. Generally speaking, I farm Nightmare Andariel for jewelry and some random fun stuff, and Nightmare Mephisto for core gear like Titans, Skulder's Eye, or T-Gods, etc. This is because while Nightmare Mephisto has a lower absolute drop rate for these, you can run him a lot faster than the Hell version, especially whenever you're doing your early gear up. So it can kind of make up for the probability gap to just have him be a lot easier and just a slightly lower chance. Whereas Hell bosses, I tend to run around my kind of top end. My personal preferences for Hell are Mephisto and Diablo, since they're packed near good farming targets such as council members, finger mages, etc. Where in Nightmare, I generally just rush the bosses directly. That said, boss runs should be done on players 3. And yes, I do actually farm Hell Mephisto and Hell Diablo a lot. I will farm Hell Andariel for certain things, but generally speaking, Nightmare Andariel wins out for me. Number 1, Chaos Sanctuary. This is a special level 85 area. The River of Flame and Chaos Sanctuary offer predictable enemy groups, a lot of which, if you're built for them, are super easy to dispatch, and due to the quantity of finger mages in the Chaos Sanctuary, they can be really good sources of junk drops, like rainbow facets, runes, charms, etc., while still having a good mix of enemies that provide solid normal drop items as well, and you can cap it off with Diablo Kill as well if you want just that sweet boss drop at the end to make it worth it. You don't have to, but it's nice. Personally, I run this on players 3 or 5 usually to boost the junk drops off of normal enemies, so I can get, say, magic jewels, runes, and stuff like that that don't rely on magic find. Dropping it to a flat players 3 before spawning Diablo himself, of course. Also, with a good map, this can get you Hephasto kill pretty early on if he's near the waypoint, as for some just extra drops, because, well, he does actually have a fairly decent drop pool as well. And to put my preference in perspective for this, Hell Travancore may be better for rainbow facets as far as like how much time is spent to get them, but I have found most of mine in Chaos Sanctuary runs because I run it so freaking often. So yeah, it's definitely one of those that I 100% recommend learning how to run. It's my personal favorite. Some people may differ. Some people love just doing the level 85 areas, and that's more power to you. I find Diablo super easy and super lucrative. If you're interested in any tips specifically for Grail items or other farming tips, be sure to subscribe because there are more of these on the way. I'm specifically going to be covering some classes for Magic Find and the level 85 areas and Grail hunts as well.